hear it for the first time. And what's particularly fun is that usually our executive director is the one who gives this presentation, but I get to do it today. So we're going to have a bit more fun with how we go through things. First and foremost, most people assume that transportation services, previously known as TAPS, is just a parking department, but it really couldn't be further from the truth. We do, yes, manage the parking on campus. That is the big parking structures, the surface lots, but we also are responsible for the roads, the bike paths, a lot of sidewalks, construction maintenance, all of that. If you have special events on campus, and there are so many events on campus, not just football, athletics, Mondavi, et cetera, but there's a bunch of smaller events that happen throughout the campus. And if you bring people to the campus via automobile, we're usually involved with that, sorting out their parking permits and sometimes some in-lot traffic direct and such. We also, of course, have compliance, which some people might know as parking enforcement. That's not there to collect a bunch of revenue. In fact, as you'll see later, we really don't want to write parking tickets. We'd rather you pay that very small daily cost on a regular basis instead of paying us that $55. It's too much effort, it's too much pain, but we'll get into that in a minute. But those very same people who are going out writing those parking citations are out there helping people with their motor vehicle problems. Lockout, and jump starts are some of the more popular ones they use. So if you ever have any of those experiences where you've locked your keys in your car, or your battery needs a jump, give us a call. We're here to help in that way. We're also the go-to resource when it comes to bikes on campus, both non-powered and e-bike. Our bicycle program, which is under my purview over here in the department, maintains all of the bike racks on campus. So those abandoned bikes that you see, we have a bunch of student staff that go through all the way around the campus, usually around once a year, hitting each rack at least once a year, removing abandoned bikes, and then going through a massive legal process to either connect them to their original owners or sell them at public auction. And if the ones that don't get sold, they get handed off to local nonprofits. We also do a lot of bike education and specific safety kinds of giveaways. One of the biggest, most well-known is the Helmet Hair Don't Care program. And if you are in need of a helmet, we strongly advise you just do a quick search for Helmet Hair Don't Care, because we've upgraded the style of helmets that we're giving away, and they're much nicer, which is why they're flying off the shelves right now. We subsidize the Causeway Connection. That is the public bus route run by YOLO Bus and SAC-RT that go between the UC Davis campus in Davis and the Sacramento Health campus. And lastly, we provide electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We have about 69 level 2 EV chargers throughout the campus, and we'll probably talk on that in just a little bit. So I mentioned we do a lot. Oh, I didn't even mention on the back one, we have an airport. If you did not know, that's us too. It's about $1 billion in total infrastructure and equipment. That's all of the facilities and heavy machinery that we have within the department. It's 18,000 parking spaces throughout the entire massive campus. But within the main campus core, where you have all the numbered lots and the parking structures, that's about 10,500, 10,600 commuter parking stalls, commuter being A, C, C+, L, etc. And then the EV ones. 35 miles of roadway, 18 miles of bike paths, 10 miles of bike lanes on the roadway. And with all of that massive infrastructure that we manage, it's only 27 career staff. And when the students are taking the positions, about 80 students. It is difficult. It is not easy. It's not just because there's a whole lot to do. It's because we have a few different types of mandates that are counterbalancing. We have to offer equitable parking solutions. By solutions, I mean pricing and proximity for our students, our staff, our faculty, and our visitors. And the the California Master Plan for Higher Education from 1960 requires that parking systems in the UC be self-sustaining auxiliary enterprises, along with housing and dining. So that means no tax funds and no tuition funds can go to the parking system. We need that revenue to run the system. So we have to charge for parking and an appropriate cost to support all of our expenses. And as a result, need to write those parking citations to ensure that everyone is paying for parking. And then that citation revenue is required to go into our sustainable transportation efforts, the stuff that I do. And then we also have to really balance the concepts of easy access versus the additional cost of increasing parking spaces. For example, everyone wants to park as close into the core as possible, or if you're at the vet med area, as close to the main buildings as possible. So instead of having huge open lot, people say, why not just build another parking structure? Well, those parking structures are really expensive. The concrete, the steel, the labor, the land, the electrical, more electrical than ever because we want those EV chargers. It would end up costing anywhere between $45,000 and $55,000 per parking stall. Whether we amortize that over 30 years, 12 months, number of cars coming in, and we have to spread that pain of that cost into the increased cost of parking. So what we're doing our best to do is to reduce the number of vehicles coming to campus, even though the number of people keep coming to campus goes up, so that we don't have to build a new parking structure and thus keep costs relatively low. All right. We do have a few forces of change affecting the way that we do business here. Number one, sustainability. The University of California Sustainable Practices Policy requires that we reduce the number of single occupancy vehicles, that's your drive alone commuters, by 10% by 2025 as compared to 2015. Now, with all of our teleworkers that we have now, we're fairly certain we're going to hit that without a problem, but we have to maintain that reduction of vehicles up through 2025 to hit that mandate number. There are further mandates down the line because, of course, the goal is to continually reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Moreover, in the past, prior to our switch to daily choice parking, it used to be the norm that you pay for a month, a quarter, or subscribe to a monthly permit for an entire year, and then you have that sunk cost. So you're paying $65 a month, $75 a month, and why in the world would you actually consider jumping on the bus or a bike halfway through the month? You'd at least want to wait until the end of the month, that way you can choose to end your permit subscription there and not lose any money because you've sunk that cost already. It's hard to get people out of the car when they're on that monthly or longer system. Also in the past, we had fairly old technology. I'll say we were stuck in the 20th century up until the pandemic. We were still doing hang tags and a visual inspection of vehicles to make sure they had those hang tags. We've made that switch to LPR now, and that allows us to do a whole lot more with that data and predictive information coming through. We also are dealing with the hybrid work environment. And I just mentioned that hybrid environment, that telework option, is so fantastic for sustainability gains. However, that also means that we have fewer vehicles coming to campus. That means fewer people paying into the parking system, but we still have all these debts on these parking structures and the backfill of revenue that we had to take a loan out on during the lockdown and before the return to campus. So sustainability wants to push the revenue down, but our expenses continue at the same level as they have for the number of years. So in 2019, our problem was too many vehicles coming to campus, and we were actually looking at building more parking facilities and thus increasing the cost of parking significantly. We told ourselves we cannot build our way out of this. We have to change behavior even more than the established UC Davis culture. We had here a monthly rate increase of $67 in 2019 would have been necessary to actually increase the parking supply to meet the demand at that time. And if you were here in 2019, I'm pretty sure you remember we had stack parking. We were putting cars in the aisles of our parking facilities. Today, roughly half the number of vehicles are coming to campus on a regular basis. And a lot fewer of them are staff vehicles, which means they're not dwelling all day. So you have the student vehicles, which are just coming on for part of the day and taking off. So there's a lot more capacity today than there was then. Unless you're parking at the quad or a couple of the other extremely high demand areas, finding parking is fairly easy, but that revenue is just no longer there. That's what we're seeing as our new normal here. Now, of course, we did increase parking prices. And one of the questions we get, it's actually up and down. Sometimes it's, tell us what the other campuses are paying versus, well, that really doesn't matter because UC Davis is very special. It's very different. Well, here's what the daily rate is let's see, do I get my mouse on here? Here we go. The daily rates at the different campuses. Not all the campuses have really gone fully into the daily rates like we have. Some have though. So for the employee daily rate at UC Davis, the premium parking location A is $460. The C, which is our general parking, is $350 a day, and then our remote parking is $225 a day. And another way to look at it is the parity, right? The number of days it takes for you to park using the daily rate until you've hit that threshold of that monthly permit, so that it would be more cost effective for you to join that monthly permit that we still offer for staff and faculty here at UC Davis. It's called LRPP, and there's the A, C, and L option. So it'd be, if you're parking 16 days or fewer, you're better off on the daily rate if you're parking exclusively in A. If you're parking exclusively in C and you're parking 18 days or fewer, you're per month, that is, you're better off with that daily rate. And if you're parking 20 days or fewer, which is the vast majority of the months in the L exclusively, you're better off paying that daily rate. So what it's showing here is we have fairly close parity. The only competitor we have is San Diego, and they're the other ones that have gone so full bore into this daily rate for the sake of sustainability. I'm sure there'll be questions about the rates as we get to the end. By all means, enter those into chat so we can get to them, or hold on to them until we get to the end. And here's the monthly cost comparison. Here it again, the A rate is our premium parking option, $75 for UC Davis. The general, the C, is at $65 at UC Davis. We're just below average, or just below the, I guess that'd be the median. And then right here, UC Davis for our remote parking option right here. So we're nowhere near the top on any of them, fairly low on the premium option, and about mid-level for the general, the C, and the remote L. We have a few different zones. One is relatively new, one is genuinely new. Everyone knows the A, the C, and the L. Our premium location, employees only. C is general, that's the vast majority of the parking stalls, and L is our remote. It's worth noting, though, that we've added a few new L zones. We've converted them from C to L, so you could pay less on a daily basis, or on that LRPP monthly option if you'd like, if you want to park at 30, 32, or 57. 30 and 30 is over here by the rec pools, 57 is in the vet med area, 32, I believe, is recently renamed from the Primate Research Center. For those who don't know, we do have an A+ permit. It costs the same amount as the visitor rate, $15. Why would you pay $15? Because it's literally reserved, and you can only use it, you can only reserve it within 24 hours in advance. So if you're coming in at 11 a.m., you need to teach a class, you need to be somewhere in particular, and you need that up close parking stall, you can reserve it. It's yours, and you pay for it. There aren't that many of them on campus. They're in some key areas, and we're watching just how frequently they're used. We also have a C+ option. You'll see these in A areas, but it allows those underutilized A areas to give access to students who'd be willing to pay the same A rate, but not have full reign over the entire A zone. So it's allowing them to fill in those empty stalls. And that's one of the things that it's really useful about our daily rate system, is that since we do not get revenue for this department unless there are vehicles in stalls, it requires us to use every stall as efficiently as possible. And we want people to fill in all those empty gaps that are in that towards the center of the campus, because it means everyone gets that closer parking that they want. All right, parking fees approval process. Doesn't anyone oversee what you do? Who approves this? Well, we have a lengthy approval process. Whenever we are considering increasing the cost of parking, first we do our full-on annual budget analysis. What were the expenses this year? What are we expecting in expenses next year? How much revenue did we bring in? How much revenue does it look like we're going to bring in? Pre-pandemic, it was straight line, right? We could see our expenses and everything. That's all very predictable. Post-pandemic, things have really, really changed. Still, we do our internal budget revenue review and a rate proposal that goes up to the FOA admin, and then they go through their analysis of budget and review, and then it goes to the vice chancellor level, and then the vice chancellor goes through the review and then gives the final word as to whether or not it's approved. And then we typically go out to the various stakeholder groups: staff assembly, academic senate, ASUCD, associated graduate students, and all the various unions. And there's an order in which that happens. And then we go to the general campus notifications, because we want all of that feedback. Now you're probably wondering, why are we just hearing this presentation now if the rates were increased at the beginning of September? Well, normally we prefer to do all of our budgeting in January, February. Then we go to the FOA admin and vice chancellor, and we get all of our approvals and all of our ducks in a row by May and start our meetings, notifications, etc. then. But this spring was a bit more complicated with the vice chancellor retiring, the huge effort to make commencement happen as it did. And in that process, everything kept getting pushed farther and farther and farther along. And then we were in summer. So once we get into summer, we know, especially, with that first year back, with commencement being all the work that it was, and so many of these organizations being academically oriented, we knew that there was going to be difficulty getting those meetings together. So we're here now, we're giving you this information, and furthermore, we're telling you that we're probably going to follow that same previous process in this coming year, if necessary, of going through the budgeting process, notifications, and approval. And we want to have these meetings as we had in the past, prior to the change of the fiscal year, and then be able to appropriately implement any changes to the rate that we may need. So, budget, talking money. It's always money with this place. This year, about a third of our expenses are completely fixed debt services on the quad parking structure, on pavilion parking structure, gateway, and the money that we needed to actually fund having almost zero revenue for 6 months, and then about 30% revenue for another 18 months before the campus fully reopened with the students returning in fall 2011. In addition to that, close to about another third goes to UC Davis assessments, expenses, because we are an auxiliary, we're not general funded, so we do have to pay UC Davis to do things. And then some of that money has to go to UCOP as well. At the moment, because of the reduced number of vehicles coming to campus, and because of those expenses that are fixed and that are not modifiable, we are at about a structural deficit of $3 million a year. So that's $3 million more in expenses than revenue. With flexible work, as I mentioned before, our parking demand is reduced about 10%, at least according to the latest stats that we heard, which wasn't exactly the last couple months. 10% of our employees are working permanently from home, or at least they are expecting to work permanently from home. A whole bunch of others are on hybrid work schedules and are coming to campus less than 5 days a week. And then there is some adjustment as well. The campus is planning to cancel some leases on off-campus offices, hopefully bringing those employees back to the main campus. But whether or not those employees take up some level of hybrid or long-term remote work schedule, that's all yet to be figured out, or experienced, I should say. And we don't know exactly how that's going to affect revenue. Again, from the sustainability side, we're saying, yay. From the revenue side, we're saying we could use a lot more vehicles on campus. Another way to look at this. So we have our base expenses, our facility management stuff, our assessments, and our red line is our revenue. Notice our revenue 2018, 2019, up to 2020, we had so many cars. We were still stacked parking at that time. And then crash. Very little revenue comparatively speaking. We factor in labor and we're already over budget. And then deferred expenses. You might have heard that term in the past. Deferred expenses refers to anything that we should be doing now and we're putting off, kicking the can down the road for the sake of solvency right now. Those deferred expenses can only be deferred for so long. We're starting to take back a couple of those, but we really aren't 100% certain about our finances this year, so we can't bring them all back. They do need to be done. Some of this is maintenance. We want our parking facilities in good turn. And we've also had a couple other divisions within our family organization, CPES, take on some expenses as well. So we're being helped out. Revenue category. So mentioned the LRPP monthly, that's only about 9% of our total revenue. The vast majority of the revenue comes in from daily, and that's not because it's a big money maker, quite the opposite. It facilitates people paying less on an annual basis. The reason we get so much of the revenue proportionally from daily revenue is just because it's popular. People like it. They don't want to pay a full month if they're going to take 2-3 days off. Students certainly don't want to use a monthly permit once they figure out the math and say, oh, I'm only driving to campus 3, 4, 5 times a month. And we have those numbers. We know how infrequently they actually drive to campus. About 11% of our revenue come through fines. That's our citations and such. 4% through events and 4% through other forms. And we are looking at other ways of generating revenue as well, because we know if we're taking sustainability seriously, we should not bank on more cars coming to campus, but actually fewer and fewer. We do have some plans, some hopes to implement over the next few years, several years, in fact. In-space sensors. You might have seen a couple of these dots in some of the facilities around campus. These little dark plastic things put in either drive aisles or in the actual parking stalls. Those are sensors to see whether or not a vehicle is currently standing there or if a vehicle has passed over that spot. Our hope after testing this system is that in specific areas on campus, we might be able to tell you where there are open parking stalls. So this would greatly reduce the time it takes for you to find a parking stall, and we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from people constantly spinning up and down the parking facilities. If they could see that floors 2, 3, 4, 5 are full and just go straight to the top, excellent. Fixed LPR cameras at high turnover facilities. Again, this is part of an efficiency thing, part of a sustainability thing. If we knew how many vehicles there were in a parking facility, and how many vehicles in that parking facility, how many license plates actually have paid permits associated with them, we could know whether or not the cost benefit really plays out and makes it worthwhile to send a compliance vehicle over to actually check those vehicles. So lot 25, let's say it's completely full, but everyone there has paid for parking. There's no reason to send a truck through there to check the license plates. But if we go over here to Pavilion and let's say it's 50% full, but 25% of the plates there still have no permits associated with them, well, that's worth actually sending a truck over there. So it's a very efficient use of the vehicles and also reducing our fuel use and greenhouse gas emissions. And we're also looking at new analysis tools. Right now, I'm serving as the primary analyst in the department, in addition to the other type of work that I do. And it's millions and millions of rows of data analyzing how people are using the parking system. We're looking at ways to have a separate software, standalone software that can give us quicker, more consistent insight into how the system's being used and to change how we sort out our stalls. That way it actually meets demand quicker and makes your parking experience a lot easier. Pre-tax payroll deduction. Yes. So where'd it go? I'll tell you. When we made the move to Park Mobile, we moved to a fully digital system. We could no longer simply pull out an elected amount from your paycheck and have that pay for your parking fees. Instead, the amount that you pay on a monthly basis depends on how frequently you hit that Park Mobile button, right? Park today, not tomorrow, I'm working from home, park today, so on and so forth. So what we need is a new vendor to come in to take your payroll deduction funds, turn that into a payment card, and you can save that payment card in Park Mobile and just pay from that as you go. We've selected that vendor. We're still in the process of implementing that vendor. And if you've had WageWorks, it's very similar to them. The selected vendor that we're using is called Loom. I've used the system. We're almost there. We're just trying to work through some complexities with some changes in banking law. And that's a rabbit hole that we can fall down if you want to talk to me on the side, but it's all the way up there at the OP level. And once we get that sorted, we're going to make the announcement, and it'll take you probably 5 minutes to set up the account. And then you'll be able to adjust how much you put on that parking card from pre-tax, or you can adjust it up and down or whatever. Either way, it'll be fully under your control. No one else will be in the way, and you'll be able to control your pre-tax payroll deductions to pay either LRPP or Park Mobile with those once it's set up. All right. So discussion topics, which are very popular. Will more rate increases be needed in the future? Possibly, likely, I'll say, especially as our sustainability efforts kick up into the highest possible gear. Are we going to have any increase or decrease in utilization? Again, we have to see how this year turns out. I'm looking at how our numbers last year turned out day to day versus how this year turning out. And we have approximately the same number of Park Mobile transactions happening for the first few days of the fall quarter, slightly higher, like a couple hundred more vehicles per day. But it does look like it's approximately the same number of vehicles. And another thing to consider is that if we wanted to break even, if that was the goal, was to break even this year, we would have had to increase the daily parking rates to a C level of $6. A permits would be $9 and L's would be down to $3. L is not that much higher, but the A is significantly higher. We were told by our leadership, no, bad idea. We understood, didn't even make that proposal full power, and we made these kinds of increases, knowing that these were still significant increases, but we had to get closer and closer to reapproach solvency. So here's a question for you. Knowing that we have this financial situation and considering that the cost of the driving commute is so expensive with the cost of gas today, which is ridiculous. And I say this as someone whose job it is to get people out of cars, who used to think, gas going up, that'll help me get more people on the bus. That gas price is ridiculous. Considering that cost and all the other costs that we're facing today, would you support a locked in 3-year rate cycle versus the annual reevaluation on a regular basis? There's a lot of things to consider there. For example, we look at our current costs and our current revenue, and we agree to those 3-year rate increases. Those are the 3-year rate increases. Everyone knows about them. Or do it on an annual basis and we check our current context. And I think that is the last of my slides. It is. Okay, so I will open up for questions here. I'll be able to go back and forth through the various slides if necessary. Otherwise, let's do this.
All right, let me unspotlight you so it moves. All right, so we got a couple questions to start us off in the chat. So I'll start with this first one. Why make it difficult to move between LRPP and daily? and why disallow Park Mobile if enrolled in the LRPP parking? These make carpooling logistics more difficult.
Right. So LRPP and Park Mobile are two completely separate technological systems. The LRPP, our monthly, is run through our legacy parking management system, and Park Mobile is a completely different mobile software. And to get that data swapped takes a bit of administrative work on our side. And we'd be able to predict the sheer number of people looking to swap between one type of parking and the other based on the calendar. We know because of Thanksgiving and because of what's it called, the winter holidays, people would be jumping out there, and that would be a huge amount of work for our very depleted staff to actually manage. And then once they come back in the new year, to bounce them back over. So it's literally has everything to do with administrative burden. In the future, when we transition away from our existing system, that there may be a cleaner option for that. But at the moment, we do have to look out for our administrative workers and help them be as efficient as possible. And sometimes that does mean reducing a little bit of convenience on part of our general population.
All right, thank you. And then can you speak a little bit to retiree parking and how that fits into the overall plan?
Sure. Retiree parking is a special animal unto itself. And in fact, I think there is a tabling session today where one of my colleagues, Aaron Burrick, is going to be there walking retirees through the process. And as of this year, it is even easier. The idea is simple. You go to a web form on our website, put in some key information, including up to 2 license plates, and hit submit. That's it. And you're parking for free as a retiree. Some key things about retirees, though. Once you have that permit, we do have to keep track of whether you've come back as a student or an employee at any level of appointment or any level of compensation. Because if you do that, you're no longer eligible to receive that free RT permit. And when it comes to parking at the UC Davis Health Campus, you have to do nothing because we're now exchanging data. Because we're on fully digital or fully license plate systems on both campuses, we simply send over those plates and it's on their park for free list effectively. So it's super simple now. Now, if we're not getting revenue, is that not good? Why should we be giving away free parking? Well, it's kind of a partnership deal. One, we know retirees aren't coming to campus a whole bunch. They're not coming every day. And if they were, chances are that they're working here, getting some level of compensation, at which point they no longer are qualified. Additionally, it's the retiree center and their funding that actually pays for these. They pay into the retiree permits. There was a point where we wanted to get the retirees on the daily model as well, even though it would cost $0, but just having them hit that button whenever they show up on campus. That way we can have that fund only deducted exactly what is used. The retirees didn't really like that. They don't want to hit the button on a daily basis. So they said, okay, we'll just take that flat funding and we'll give you the unlimited amount of parking. In the future, we hope that will change. We don't want to charge the retiree center or hit that fund more than necessary. As you can tell, we only want people to pay for what they use.
All right, and a question kind of tied to that, is there a senior citizen rate? I don't know that there is, but
there is not a senior citizen rate. We don't have very many special rates here on the UC Davis campus. The rationale being that if you have a vehicle and it's occupying a stall, there's little reason for you not to pay that appropriate cost. The exceptions being RT and then the ADA stalls. The ADA stalls are currently complimentary on behalf of the UC Davis campus. So no charge there. If you have a placard, park, and then I forget, testing my knowledge, I forget if you actually have to use Park Mobile to say, hey, I'm here. But you do need to show that placard or have that on your plate. Otherwise, no discounts. And in fact, the UC policy prevents us from giving away parking in almost every single circumstance for employees. The only way we can give you free parking is if you are a Nobel Prize winner. So if there's ever some motivation to win a Nobel Prize, it's to get free parking at a UC campus. Just one though, just one UC campus.
Yeah, I think they have it at Berkeley, right? I walked by and saw the spots.
Yep.
So, all right, moving on to electric charging stations. Can you speak to that and any long-term plans for those stations?
Yes, I can speak to about 4 hours at a minimum on electric vehicle charging. I love it. I've done a whole lot of EV charger installations at UCI while I was there. I think we got well over 100 installed before I transferred over here to UC Davis. And I come here and we have what we refer to as dumb chargers, as the opposite of smart charger. Your smart charger is networked, it can take payment and all this other stuff. But here we have our Clipper Creek, which is just plug in and you get juice. We want to replace those. One, because it will help people understand where there's available EV charging. Two, so we can collect the appropriate amount of revenue for the electricity being used. Right now, you have to pay $1 a day. But if you pay $1 a day in a Tesla, you're getting a heck of a deal because you're pulling up to 15 kilowatts. If you do it in like an old Leaf, you only get about 3.3 kilowatts. So it's kind of imbalanced. We need those smart chargers to actually balance that out so that you pay for the fuel that you actually consume. The problem is, despite us winning a really good amount of money last year from the state of California to swap out all of our dumb chargers with smart chargers, we learned that just changing that hardware, just going from one type of hardware and upgrading it constitutes a construction project. And if we do a construction project in any of our parking facilities, we then have to update all of those areas that would be affected to the most modern ADA code. And in our parking structures, that actually means moving parking stalls, moving where those chargers are, adding new paths of travel, moving those paths of travel from behind vehicles to in front of vehicles. And we went through all of that to find out how much it would cost. It just skyrocketed. It just blew our budget out of the water. And last year, when we were figuring out that our revenue was not going to go back up to pre-pandemic, in fact, it was going to flounder a bit, continue to flounder a bit, we couldn't continue with that expense. So we had to resign that money back to the state of California. We're looking for new options now, even considering allowing third-party electric vehicle chargers to pay the capital expense to put their own EV chargers on campus, but to charge a negotiated per kilowatt hour rate. No plans as of yet. We're still exploring. And I'll also say that we are very aware of the timeline that the governor has set for the transition of California electric vehicles. We've done the analysis. We know the rate at which our campus vehicles are going to change over to EVs. And we know that very few people actually have the opportunity to charge at home. So we are looking at solutions, and hopefully within this next year, we'll be able to come back and give everyone an update on that.
All right, thank you. And then there's a question too about transferring between zones. So someone's asking when they could transfer from an L zone to an A or a C lot, or how that works between permit types.
Sure. This is one of those little details that very few people actually ever come across. Because if you pay for an A, you can transfer to any other A stall or C stall or L stall and pay nothing extra. It's basically a step down, right? So an A can go to a C plus, C, L. A C can go to an C or an L, and an L is stuck in those L zones. But going up that ladder, going from an L to a C or an A, is currently not facilitated without just paying that full daily rate for that next area. So if you paid for an L already at 9:30 a.m. and you want to go to an A later on because you have to go to another part of campus, and that's just the easiest stall to get to, you have to pay that full $460 for the day right now. We are exploring other options, but there is not currently a method to pay up into the next level.
Thank you. And then we have another question too. Has salary tiered parking fees ever been considered? Especially with the fact that a lot of our frontline workers are often not our highest paid workers that are essential and here every day, or maybe are the ones that are living further out from campus and commuting in.
That has absolutely been considered. Then there are problems with that. One is that we at Transportation Services would need access to that data. Two is one of those UC policies. It says that we cannot set a rate according to who a person is, their position at the university or anything of the such. We can only differentiate parking prices according to the proximity or the demand for parking stalls. So that's the big one right there. And it is something we've considered. It's something that we're asked to consider on an annual basis. And we constantly go through the policy and we go through these various discussions regularly. There are some campuses nationwide that have done so, not many, because of the complexity and because of the various issues that come up as a result. One of the major ones is, let's say I'm working here at my current salary. And that means I get tier 2 pricing out of 5. Let's say my partner works here as well, but my partner's an administrator, gets tier 5 pricing, the most expensive. All of our money goes into the same household, but we're just going to pay for my parking permit, even though my household income is very high. So if we want to do this most equitably, we have to consider household income, not just an individual's income. Another level of complexity. We're dual income, no kids. Someone else over here who has relatively high income has 5 kids. Now it's no longer just what your individual income is or what your household income is, but your income relative to your household size. So doing that equitably gets very complicated very quickly. So we're somewhat grateful for that simplified UC policy that says set the parking rates according to the demand and proximity of the stalls, not according to the person.
All right. Thank you. Follow up on that from Carlos. So like other benefits, pricing tiers for health insurance work that way, but that is sounding like it wouldn't work in parking.
As of yet, correct.
Okay. And that's partially because of lack of that data from HR.
The data and that policy, the whole
Okay.
equitable access, it's
Perfect.
the value of that parking stall is the same regardless of who parks in there.
And then switching back a little bit to moving cars, I have a question from someone on before the transition to this current payment structure, staff used to be able to move their cars after 5 p.m. to metered spots, example by Marac Hall. Does anything like that exist now with the 70-minute spots?
Not with the 70-minute spots, no. But after 5 p.m., if you've already paid for a C rate, you can go park in an A without issue.
All right. And then, all right, looking at other notes I jotted down, you mentioned a little bit about working with other UCs. Are there any kind of current projects or things we work on with other campuses that you want to highlight?
I think the biggest thing we're working on right now with the other campuses has to do with next steps for daily rates. We speak on a monthly basis. I think it is the directors of each of the parking departments at the various campuses. We go over a few different things, what have changed, and we do talk a bit about daily rates, how it's being implemented, the number of days. In fact, let me see if I can go back in the presentation. Every campus has had a different philosophy in the number of days it should take to meet your monthly cost, right? So here at UC Davis, it's 18 days and change for your C rate to get close to your monthly C. And as you can tell, that is not a shared philosophy throughout. So we talk about that stuff. we talk about the pandemic, how it's affecting budgets and such, how we might have cut costs. A lot of us have cut a whole bunch of it. I think all of us have cut significant expenses, either not, postponed hiring for emptied positions for salary savings, cut transit subsidies significantly, some eliminated, and all of those other things. We do team up, particularly when it comes to strategic sourcing of any kind of transportation option. Let's see, electric vehicle charging and the like. But there are other things that you really cannot team up on, such as if one campus is building a parking structure, there's no way to get, a 2-for-1 bonus or even a discount by using that same kind of contractor at a nearby UC. Those things have to be sourced out individually per the situation.
Great, thank you. And you've got a shout out in the chat for being a superstar, which I absolutely agree. And then speaking of just other UCs, I don't know if it was mentioned in the presentation, but how does reciprocity work with the daily permits?
That is actually one of those key discussions that we're having right now, because we are in this huge transition of facilitating daily throughout a number of the campuses, as you can see, right? These are, acceptable daily rates for affiliates and such. If you're coming from a different UC to come to UC Davis to visit, you let us know, we'll help you get that daily rate. Very simple. If you're going from UC Davis to another UC, you may have to just pay that daily visitor rate. It's different for everyone, and it's been a historical complexity going between the UCs, is reestablishing that reciprocity. But that is definitely one of the bigger discussions right now, and it is not universally set up as of yet.
All right. And then I've got one final question, and then we'll let you off the hook. So this question is on confirming like parking rates increasing when we have more people remote. So maybe if you just want to touch base on kind of the data you're seeing and then how that might affect in the future. And I know too, right, you said there's this possibility of this 3-year rate. So that might be something as people consider if that's something they want to see or not, would maybe lock that in.
Sure. So again, this is that battle. I want to not even going to call it a balance, because the goal is to go zero emissions, right? So if we could sustain from a I'm trying to say this in the most correct way, from a sustainability standpoint, if we could have our way, either the cars would emit absolutely zero emissions, or there'd be no cars on campus, but we still have genuine expenses to pay for. So there needs to be a certain amount of cars on campus to pay for that. As more and more people move to remote work, and maybe not by proportion, maybe by volume, if the campus begins to intentionally adopt more remote classes, all of that will reduce the number of vehicles coming to campus. And if we need to still hit a flat amount of revenue to meet our expenses, but the number of people paying that expense goes down, then the cost per person has to go up. And that's what happened this year. We're still not going to meet this year's expenses with the revenue, but rates had to go up so that we can realign that revenue to the expenses. It will probably go up again because we're not going to meet it here unless we could get the university to take on certain other expenses, which we would love to do, because we don't like increasing parking prices. We get a lot of, I'll go ahead and say, displeased communication whenever we have to do so, and that goes on throughout the year. We'd rather people be happy. We'd rather them save money. So that's unfortunately just the reality of it, because we are required to be, by policy, a self-funding auxiliary. We have to meet those expenses with parking revenue. I really, really wish, believe me, I wish I could say something else that would make others feel better about it. But fewer people paying for parking, costs stay the same. Individual costs has to go up.
All right. Well, thank you, Ramon, for letting us put you in the hot seat and answering nearly a half hour of questions. We really appreciate it. And we'll if it's okay, we'll make the slides available to folks and the recording as well. And then with 5 minutes left, I'm gonna go ahead and let Scott hop on. We have a couple of giveaways. We have a few books from the Campus Community Book Project to give away, as well as some sporting tickets. And so we'll do that. And then anyone on the executive committee, if you have an upcoming event or something you want to link in the chat, go ahead and do so. And then if we have a few minutes after Scott spins the wheel, we'll let you hop on and make announcements.
Okay, can everyone see my screen? Anybody?
I can, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we will spin the wheel first for the book project. I will also provide details in the chat afterwards. Congratulations to Kimberly.
While you spin, I can read the little spiel on the book project for this year. It's the 21st year of the book project on campus. This year's theme focuses on transformative justice and police reform and features Defund Fear, Safety Without Policing, Prisons and Punishment by Zach Norris. Originally titled We Keep Us Safe, Building Secure, Just and Inclusive Communities, this book calls upon many systems that play a role in the imperative for community safety, including the criminal legal system, healthcare, education, food, and housing access and support for caregivers. So that's this year's book. We'll also see in Staff Voice this week, they're doing a kickoff event in October. So you'll see details for that coming through.
And then I have 3 pairs of tickets for North Arizona on the 15th of this month. I'm going to spin real quick. We have Grant, congratulations. We have Jacqueline, do you mind providing me your last name in the chat? I think only your initial is, so I want to make sure I can get this to you. And last winner is going to be Ashley. Congratulations, Ashley. Perfect. Thank you, Jacqueline.
All right, thank you, Scott. I'll open it up for any announcements that folks have. Feel free to unmute. We've got a couple minutes left. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
I can do a quick plug. Hello, everyone. I am the member engagement chair for Staff Assembly this year. We have breakfast with the Chancellor. We have a spot or 2 left for 2022. If anyone would like to sign up, I'll put the link in the chat. And our Aggie Explorations tours are going really well this year. They are filling up quickly. Our October brewery tour is full, unfortunately, but we do have a pantry tour in November, and the link is in the chat to sign up there. We look forward to seeing you.
All right, and I don't see Paul on here as well. Did you want to announce the Halloween contest, and I'll grab the link for you?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. So we have a Halloween contest, costume contest coming up at the end of the month. It's from October 24th to Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. So it's for both your office or individual participants. So get your office decorated, get your Halloween costumes ready, and then we'll have a very fun and spectacular contest. So look forward to that.
All right, well, and thank you everyone. We'll be back on the normal second Tuesday from here forward. So thank you for those that adjusted to the schedule the last few months with us. And we hope you guys have a great week.